To be speaking about special forces when General Katoch has just released his own book, which is so eminently readable, it's so nostalgic and personalized that I feel embarrassed to be speaking about special forces. The good news first, I don't have a PowerPoint presentation, and actually I don't even have a script. But coming from the National Security Council, I can't stand here and pontify as to why we need to get GI systems into special forces. And since the morning we've been hearing as to how useful this technology is and how it improves our operational efficiency, how it will give us immense manipulative applicability. Why is it that we haven't got this as yet? Because GIS systems have been in this domain for some while. And I think the problem lies in understanding when you expect the government to lead the way and sort of say that the government will lead the way to get GIS systems or induct them into special forces, that is where we need to understand as to where the retarders are. And once we appreciate that, one will realize that it is far easier for the government to help the process than initiate the process in such things. Let me explain it a bit further. We understand government as a platform where policies are made and policies are implemented. But the actual fact, and it is not only in India, but the actual fact is everywhere in the world, governance is about processes and procedures. And that is where the status quo inertia lies. So whenever you want to get in a new idea, you have to get past this mindset or the comfort zone of how things are functioning till then. And there are two ways of tackling it. One way is to force the implementation of the idea, which means allow that friction to happen when you want to put something into the status quo. And friction means there will be debate, there will be a large amount of reluctance, but in the process of friction, people will realize the utility of the new idea. And therefore the majority view thereafter will overwhelm the retarders and you'll get the process through. But it's a long drawn process. And the other methodology is to cause change by nudging things gradually, to bring in small changes so that finally everybody else gets on board. I'm not denying the utility of doing this, because with the amount of stakes involved and the way nations look at things, you can't afford to subjugate one stake at the cost of the other, because finally in terms of your national objectives, you might actually be doing more wrong than good by bringing in this change. We have to accept this process, and I suppose the way to do it is to have a long range view on the subject. As long as you have a perspective beyond a period of time, and then gradually move your pieces of the jigsaw together, things will happen. Where are we now today? General Katoch just mentioned the environment, and he said that we today see in front of us a different kind of conflict, a different kind of warfare. At the end of the Cold War, one felt that tensions will go away and we would be going in for a global peace, but that never happened. Without batting an eyelid, we moved to different kinds of pressures and frictions. But what did happen was that the regulators of peace in the globe went away, and therefore new forms of conflict emerged. And therefore you hear words like fourth generation warfare, asymmetric warfare, etc., etc. Why has this happened? General Katoch just alluded to it by saying that precision, destructibility, reach, cost and impact have brought in this new spectrum within warfare, which is subconventional, terrorism, militancy, etc., etc. And if we have this new paradigm of conflict, obviously we need different instrumentalities to get over it. Special forces are one element. I will speak about special forces first and tell you why things have not got imbibed in the manner that you read about, you hear about. And then I'll move to the GIS itself and its infusion into special forces and see as to how and why they are not matching and what we need to do. Special forces are about high impact, low visibility, small footprint, low cost, high result. But with all this, there is an element of deniability which is built into this. And deniability at the national level is about a dilemma of ends and means. You are operating in an environment when you come to special forces which is politically sensitive. There is a huge amount of discrimination which you have to plan for, and the fallouts in case of a botched up operation are immense because that tugs at the deniability that you were seeking when you used your special forces. And as far as the Indian traditional mindset is concerned, for us, the means are as important as the ends. And if means are important, and you are wanting to lodge this element of special forces into this, you have a problem as far as India goes. Because the basic problem is, where do you nest this capability? Because special forces by its very meaning means that every instrumentality of the nation has to be used to facilitate it. And if you have to put everything together to make this happen, obviously these guys have to be pitched at the highest level of decision making. You pitch it there and you bring in this huge requirement of deniability, of ensuring success and discrimination and the fallouts of something going wrong. Nobody wants a piece of it at all. And that's the reason why in India you see that while conventional special forces in an episodical manner have come into play, special forces in the manner in which they should actually exist haven't come to being in India. Unless we sort this out and we change our national view of saying that the ends are more important than the means, and we are ready to get over this deniability dilemma, you will not see special forces being in the manner that at least the experts talk about. I don't see this happening very quickly. And that brings me to this element of technology in special forces. Because if you have this kind of growth, technology can at best be incremental. It can't be transformational in the manner that you would want it. And incremental means that you'll give them a better thing, you will give them capabilities which you feel they will need, which is better than what the others have. But transformational technology would mean something like GIS. A GIS is a complete system approach. You can't have one and not have the other. Let me talk about the broader aspect of technology. In a very broad thematic sense, I would consider technology as a moving target. And at the national level, what matters is, where do you get your aim right? How do you target this moving thing known as fluid, moving thing known as technology? Because if you pitch it at where it is in the contextual frame, by the time you imbibe technology, you infuse it, you proliferate it, and you produce it for the users to actually use it, technology is moved miles away, and there is that element of dissatisfaction with the user, and they will feel cheated. You do it the other way around and pitch or target technology far ahead of where it is, you have another problem. Because your own capacity to absorb, your own legacy systems, and the gap that you've chosen to bridge is so huge that by the time it actually gets about, you have a huge vacuum. There is one part which is totally legacy and there is other part which is niche, even if you manage to do things. And that's a gap which you'll never be able to bridge. So you neither can go too far ahead in technology, nor can you pitch at the contextual frame. And consider India. We are partly developing and partly developed. In a system like this, when you look at your own defense industrial base, which is research and development, which is your own PSUs, which is your private sector capability, there is huge things which you can do, and there are huge things which you can't do. And if you have to make things which you can't do happen, then you have to pitch yourself in a global framework, which means India has to look beyond all this. And we have traditional barriers about not exporting arms, being a peace-loving country, and therefore giving arms or proliferating them anywhere else from India is a taboo. In a situation like this, where these things also enable warfare, you have to get past these kind of mindsets and policies. And it's only then that you can expect the government to lead the way. Otherwise, it is the outside which has to lead the way, like automobiles, like information technology, and government will facilitate. Unfortunately, as far as GIS is concerned, we are inputting it into provision of governance, of ensuring security, and those are domains of the government. And that is why you see retarders. Let me come to GIS in India, and let me see finally as to what it means as far as special forces is concerned. In a non-technical understanding of GIS, I would say it's an amalgamation of cartography, statistic analysis, and computation capability. If you put all this together and fuse them, then you can manipulate it to the kind of application that you want, and you get the applications which you need, whether it is military or non-military. For all this, first thing you have to have is a common reference point. Let us look at what our present position is. You look at cartography. You have the Everest system coexisting with the WGS-84. And both of them are proliferating in the hope that one will overtake the other. Similarly, as far as your data is concerned, which I think the Naval Chief mentioned as to where it is housed: space, hydrography, and Survey of India. You see these domains and you will notice that you have raster data and you haven't got the vector data that you need to make sure that the GIS operates. How do you make this transition, and how long will you take? Unless you put this together and you don't populate the data enough, the GIS system, despite its capability, will always remain shortchanged. It is these things that you have to get together. And especially if you have raster data and you put special forces based on raster data, you have a major problem. Because the scales at which they are looking at, the huge clarity that they are looking at the thing, if you have raster data, you will never be able to get the kind of clarity that you want to give to them, whether in intelligence or otherwise. And it can't succeed. Special forces can't succeed unless they have this intelligence at the scale that which they want. Therefore, much work needs to be done if we have to get the GIS into place in India. Let me end by recalling my experience with this whole system. Brigadier D.D. Kapoor, I noticed, is in the audience. He was with me when we were handling the tsunami. And as far as we were concerned, we had prepared ourselves for this fusion of data in a GIS format. But when we actually started implementing it in the fond hope that we'll do much better than what we did, we finally did, of course, we realized that we had to get back to our traditional method of understanding and fusing data in the mind instead of technology allowing it. And it is thereafter that I started following as to what is happening. That's all that I have to say. I think I've just finished my allotted time. Thank you.